They called him the lunch lady's son. Never mind that his name was Jaden Parker, or that he read state tax codes the way other kids read comic books. Never mind that his mother, Linda, knew every name of every student who came through the cafeteria line. That morning, while senators debated million-dollar budgets upstairs, Jaden was in the basement wiping tables with a rag too big for his hands. But by lunchtime, the boy with dish soap on his sleeves would be sitting in the middle of a legislative hearing and asking questions no one else dared to. Questions that shook the room, that rewrote the conversation, and forced an entire state to listen. But how did a kid with no microphone, no title, and no place at the table become the loudest voice in the room? And what did it cost him? If stories like this move you even a little, go ahead, drop a comment. We want to know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It's stories like these that remind us power doesn't always look like what you expect. The tray clattered louder than it should have. Jaden winced, quickly catching the edge before it slid off the counter. The cafeteria was empty, clean floors, stacked chairs, bleach still hanging in the air. He was early, too early, but that's how Linda liked it. Helps clear the kitchen before the lunch rush, she'd say, already tying her apron. She was slicing bananas behind the steam table. You didn't forget your geometry homework again, did you? Jaden shook his head. Finished it last night. Got stuck on the word problem, though. She raised an eyebrow. The one with the 2 trains? No, the one with the school budget and the lunch program cuts. She paused, knife in midair. That's not math. That's politics. Jaden grinned. Same thing. The radio crackled. Over static, the morning announcements began. A field trip to the Minnesota State Legislative Office was happening today. 8th grade only. We'll witness real government in action, the voice chirped. Linda exhaled. They never take 6th graders. Jaden didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the bulletin board beside the door, an old flyer for a nutrition funding hearing. He'd read it 4 times already. They're voting on that bill today, he muttered. Linda glanced at him. You don't work there, Jay. But I know what they're about to do. And it's wrong. She turned away, dropping banana slices into trays. You're 11, and hungry kids are 6. She didn't argue with that. The bus arrived for the older kids. Jaden watched them file out, laughing, backpacks bouncing, energy buzzing. He stayed behind, wiping tables that didn't need wiping. But his mind was far away, in chambers of oak and marble, where grown-ups in suits said words like oversight and deficit, while children stood in silent lines waiting for a tray of frozen peas and milk cartons. And then he heard it. A voice on the intercom, not the regular secretary, but Mr. Hanley, the vice principal. We need one more chaperone for the Capitol trip. Anyone from staff available, please respond immediately. Jaden's eyes lit up. Linda caught that look. Don't you dare, she said without turning around. But he was already gone. The rotunda echoed louder than it should have. Marble floors, leather shoes. Voices bouncing off columns older than memory. Students huddled in nervous clusters, gripping clipboards, half listening to their civics teacher explain the difference between a bill and a resolution. Somewhere behind the velvet rope, lawmakers filed into a budget subcommittee room, murmuring, joking, avoiding eye contact with the advocates holding hand-painted signs near the steps. A woman from the Department of Education whispered into her phone, "If we lose this vote, it guts the entire breakfast pilot." Jaden stood at the edge of it all, small in his borrowed windbreaker. His name not on the list, his backpack still damp from rushing through the drizzle. No one noticed him. Not yet. He wasn't even supposed to be here. But he'd found a lanyard on the floor outside the visitor center. It said media. He wore it like a shield. Inside the chamber, something was wrong. A staff interpreter was clutching his chest, sliding sideways in his seat. Someone shouted for help. A young aide rushed over, but the man had already slumped to the floor. Paramedics were called. Paper spilled. And now, the room, half committee members, half school district reps, was frozen. The chairwoman, Senator Lantham, looked over her glasses and said flatly, "Unless someone else can interpret the amended clause, we're going into recess." "No," came a voice. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Heads turned. Jaden stepped forward from the threshold, one sneaker untied. A single sheet of printed legislation clutched in his fist. I can help. Latham blinked. And you are? I'm Jaden Parker. From Jefferson Middle. Snorts. A chuckle. One of the aides leaned into another. Is this some kind of prank? Jaden cleared his throat. You're discussing the 2024 education allocation. Section 17C. Title 4. Language affecting district-level meal reimbursements. You're missing the subclause about pre-qualification thresholds. A beat, then another. One of the legislative analysts frowned. Wait, how did you know that? I read the draft last week, Jaden replied. It was public for 48 hours before you redacted it. The room shifted. Kid, this is a legislative hearing. Another voice barked. You don't just walk in and... I didn't walk in, Jaden said. I followed. A low murmur. Latham leaned forward. You say you can interpret the clause? Jaden nodded. I don't need to change it. Just explain it. A pause hung there heavy. Two representatives exchanged a glance. A younger staffer whispered, let him try. The room's already in chaos. Latham hesitated, then gave the slightest nod. Proceed. Jaden stepped forward, gripping the printed page like a lifeline. His voice steadied. The clause says funding will be tied to pre-year student poverty index. But what's missing is how you calculate that, by zip code median income instead of actual free lunch eligibility. That disqualifies schools like Franklin Elementary, where half the kids go hungry, but the neighborhood averages look rich. He didn't look up as he spoke, just kept reading, explaining, building. Someone coughed. Someone else wrote something down. By the time he stopped, the silence had changed. It was no longer awkward. It was respect. Linda burst in 5 minutes too late. Out of breath. Soaked from the rain, her apron still tied at her waist. Her eyes scanned the chamber and landed on him. Her boy, standing beneath the state seal, surrounded by microphones. What is he doing? She whispered. One of the teachers turned to her. Changing the vote. The pen trembled slightly in the chairwoman's hand. She didn't write, just held it there, hovering over the notepad as if unsure whether to record what had just been said. Around the table, the lawmakers looked to one another, then back to the boy still standing at the center of the room. Jaden shifted on his feet. His sneakers squeaked against the polished tile. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be speaking. But here he was, and no one had told him to stop. A man in a pinstripe suit, Representative Gordon, leaned forward, arms crossed. Son, are you saying you read the entire budget draft on your own? Jaden nodded once. It was online. Page 47 was buried under the funding indexes, but it didn't match the numbers from a year before. Something was off. Gordon's jaw tensed. And how exactly would you know what matched? I work in the lunchroom, Jaden said quietly. I see who skips. I see who saves half their sandwich for dinner. Your numbers said we had a drop in meal need. We didn't. We had a drop in people asking. A ripple moved through the room. Senator Latham set down her pen. You're not on any schedule, she said slowly. You're not even authorized to be in this room. I know, Jaden replied, but someone had to explain what this really means. Not just to you, but for them. For us. He unfolded a second sheet of paper from his back pocket, creased, slightly damp. It was a list handwritten in blue ink. These are kids at my school who missed lunch last month. Not because they forgot, because their account was empty. 32 of them, in 1 week. His voice cracked slightly. He cleared it fast. They didn't want to say anything. They just sat there. You think numbers lie. They don't. People do. The silence that followed was different now. Heavier. No longer disbelief. Just wait. The weight of truth hanging in a room used to polished words and scripted outrage. From the back of the room, a voice spoke up. It was Linda. That's my son. She said, not loud but steady. I didn't know he'd come here, but I'm not surprised. Latham looked toward her, then back at Jaden. And what do you expect from us? She asked. Jaden hesitated, then raised his eyes. Don't vote on numbers. Vote like you've seen those 32 faces. The video hit 1 million views before the school buses made it back from the Capitol. No one planned it. No press release. No official statement. Just a teacher, Ms. Russo, who had filmed the last 5 minutes of the hearing with shaky hands and tears behind her glasses. She uploaded it to her private Facebook with the caption, "An 11-year-old just taught our state legislature how to read a budget." An hour later, it was everywhere. Cable anchors debated whether it was inspiring or inappropriate. On Reddit, a thread titled "The Kid Who Broke the Room" exploded with over 10,000 comments in a day. A veteran from Des Moines wrote, "That boy speaks like someone who's already paid for his education." Jaden didn't know any of that. He was back at Jefferson Middle, wiping trays, sleeves rolled up past his elbows, pretending nothing had changed. But it had. People stared longer now. Some smiled. Some didn't. At lunch, a 7th grader approached his table. Trey clutched her chest. "My brother's on your list," she said quietly. "He told me not to tell you, but I think it mattered to him." Jaden just nodded. In the teacher's lounge, Linda scrolled through her phone with a frown. The calls hadn't stopped. Reporters, lobbyists, even a morning talk show from New York had reached out. One message from the Department of Education said simply, "We'd like to talk about your son." She didn't answer any of them. Back at the Capitol, things were shifting. The clip had reached a retired senator in Duluth who called 3 current colleagues. That afternoon, an amendment was reintroduced, same funding clause, this time with an override on the zip code indexing. When the committee reconvened, Representative Gordon sat stone-faced. "I moved to add the Parker revision to Section 17C, he said. "The what?" someone asked. "The kid earned his own footnote," Gordon replied. The motion passed, 8-2. At the bottom of the new language, a single line appeared in the draft. Adjustment made to reflect underreported hunger rates in high-income zones, per testimony of Citizen Parker, J. Jaden didn't see it right away. It wasn't on the front page of any website. It was buried deep in the legislative logs, just like the original clause had been. But someone printed it out, circled the line, and slid it into his locker at school. No name. Just 5 words scribbled at the top in pencil. "You're not invisible anymore." At first, the silence felt like relief. No more cameras. No more interviews. For a full week, Jaden walked the halls of Jefferson Middle like a regular kid again. He turned in his homework, helped Mrs. Alvarez organize science lab bins, even joined a chess match in the library. No one asked him about the budget clause. No one said hero. It was quiet. Too quiet. Linda noticed it first. Her name disappeared from the cafeteria's scheduling board, replaced by temp staff. No explanation. Just a clipboard and silence from the front office. She called district payroll. "We're reviewing your position," they said, pending administrative feedback. 2 days later, Jaden was called into the counselor's office during second period. Ms. Drew sat him down gently. "Hey, Jay, I just got word from downtown. They're reevaluating student public appearances tied to legislative issues. You're not in trouble, but the school's being careful." He didn't answer, just stared at the stack of discipline reports on her desk, none of them his. Then came the online posts. At first, they looked like memes. A photo of Jaden edited to look like a puppet with strings labeled teacher unions. Another with bold red letters, Planet Activist, or just coached. One anonymous blog claimed his speech was written by a state lobbyist. Another hinted that Linda had ties to political donors. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter. The district issued a vague statement about maintaining neutrality in student involvement. The clip of Jaden's testimony vanished from several news sites overnight. When Linda called the Minneapolis school board to ask why, she was transferred 3 times and then told, "We're not authorized to comment." That night, someone slipped an envelope under their apartment door. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. "Tell the boy to stay out of things he doesn't understand." Linda folded the paper once. Calmly. She didn't cry. She walked into the kitchen and pulled Jaden's drawing off the fridge, the one where he'd sketched the Senate chamber in blue crayon, and put it in a drawer. Jaden watched her, said nothing, but he knew. They weren't being forgotten. They were being erased. The call came just after midnight. Linda was washing uniforms in the sink, too tired to fold, too wired to sleep, when the burner phone buzzed on the windowsill. She didn't recognize the number. For a second, she thought about letting it ring, but something in her gut said otherwise. She answered, a woman's voice. Low, steady. Ms. Parker? Yes. I used to work in procurement oversight for the state board. You don't know me, but I watched your son testify. Silence. I know what's happening to you. I've seen it before. It starts with reassignment, then silence, then disappearance. Linda's fingers tightened around the towel. What do you want? To meet. In person. Not recorded. Tomorrow. 4 p.m. corner of Lyndale and 12th. Red Building. Bring your son. Before Linda could respond, the line went dead. The next day, the Red Building turned out to be a battered community center with a flickering exit sign and no receptionist. The kind of place where no one asks questions. A woman in a gray cardigan waved them inside and led them down a hallway that smelled like old coffee and second chances. In a back room, 3 women sat at a folding table covered in binders, sticky notes, and worn laptops. No one introduced themselves. One of them simply gestured to the screen. We think we know why they're coming after you. The file opened. A scanned invoice. Then another. Dozens. All stamped. Disbursed discretionary fund. These funds were earmarked for free lunch programs in districts like yours, the woman said. But over 60% was redirected, quietly, into administrative consulting for private education firms. Firms that also donated to 2 of the senators sitting in that room the day Jaden testified. Another clicked a new tab. A spreadsheet. Names, dates, wire transfers. Jaden leaned forward. He read faster than anyone in the room. They tried to bury this, he said quietly. That's why they changed the clause language. The woman in gray nodded. Exactly. Your son didn't just make a speech. He walked into the middle of a 10-year pattern no one was supposed to notice. Linda's voice cracked. What do we do with this? The answer was immediate. You let him keep talking. Jaden looked up. Not afraid. Just ready. The flash drive clicked into place with a soft snap. Jaden sat still, barely breathing, as the video loaded. The file was unmarked. No title, no date, just a grainy thumbnail of a closed-door meeting in what looked like a downtown office. No official seal. No flux. But the voices were clear. I'm telling you, if we adjust the poverty metrics now, the whole funding model collapses. That was Senator Miles. His tone flat. Calculated. A second voice, female, sharp, impatient. Then we don't adjust it. We bury it. Filter the funds through auxiliary admin. No one reads past page 70. Someone else laughed. And then the kicker. Besides, who's going to notice? Some janitor's kid? The room went quiet. The silence hit harder than the laughter. Jaden froze, eyes locked on the screen. Linda stood behind him, her hand still on his shoulder. Her fingers tensed. Another voice joined the tape, one they hadn't heard before. A man's voice, younger, uneasy. What about the press? Or the board? They're on the payroll. The board signs what we tell them. And the press? They don't do math. The clip ended there. No music, no edit. Just cold, mechanical truth. Jaden turned slowly. They said it, he whispered, out loud, like it didn't even matter. Linda didn't speak. She sat beside him, staring at the frozen frame on the monitor. The faces were blurry, but the guilt, unmistakable. A beat passed. Then Jaden stood. We're showing this. To who? Linda asked quietly. Jaden's eyes narrowed. To everyone. They didn't post it to TikTok. Not this time. This time, Jaden uploaded the clip to a new YouTube channel. No name, no face, just a black thumbnail titled, What They Said When They Thought No One Was Listening. It didn't need a title card. No music, no effects, just voices. Corruption clears glass. By morning, it had 87,000 views. By noon, it hit 500,000. CBS called. So did NPR. A late-night host quoted one line. Asterisk some janitor's kid. Asterisk then paused for a full 10 seconds before looking into the camera and saying, well, some janitor's kid just hit back. Jaden said no to interviews, no to podcasts, no to a documentary offer from Netflix. But when the invite from Face the Nation came, he didn't answer right away. He sat on it for 2 days. Then he said yes. When the segment aired, Jaden wore a navy blue hoodie zipped all the way up. He didn't smile, didn't shift in his seat. He looked into the camera like someone who had run out of patience. The host asked, "You've been accused of grandstanding, being coached. What do you say to that?" Jaden didn't blink. "I say, if telling the truth makes you suspicious, then maybe the truth's scarier than we thought." The room went still. The host adjusted her notes. "And what do you want now?" Jaden didn't hesitate. "I want them to look me in the eye and say 32 hungry kids don't matter." She didn't have a response. She didn't need one, because millions of people watching already knew the answer. The hearing room was packed, not with press, not with staffers, with folding chairs, with cafeteria workers, with school nurses, with parents holding photos of their kids, laminated meal slips, printouts of unpaid lunch debt, rows of them, quiet, watching. Jaden stood behind the microphone, his notes folded in half in his pocket. He didn't need them. Senator Lantham cleared her throat. "Mr. Parker, you have 5 minutes." He didn't say thank you. He didn't smile. He just stepped forward. "My name is Jaden Parker. I'm 11 years old. I go to Jefferson Middle. You already know that." He glanced at the row of suits behind the long table. "You've already heard about numbers, budgets, indices, projections. But what you haven't heard is this." He pulled something from his pocket. A peanut butter cracker, crushed, still in its plastic wrap. "This is what Marcus ate last Thursday." It's all he had. He took it from a nurse's drawer and pretended he wasn't hungry. A ripple passed through the crowd. No one moved. Marcus isn't a number. Neither is Rosa, or Eli, or me. He looked up, eyes locked on the senior committee members. "You want to talk about waste? How about wasted potential? How about the cost of teaching kids to be ashamed of being poor?" A pause. Then his voice softened. "You think we don't notice when there's no milk on the card? We do. You think we don't see the difference between frozen peas and fresh fruit? We do. You think we don't feel it when you cut the line just enough for us to fall through?" He took a breath. Not shaky. Steady. "You shouldn't have to be smart to get a full lunch. You shouldn't have to speak in this room to get someone to care." He held up the cracker again. "Do you want to be remembered as the people who ignored this? Or the ones who said, 'That's enough'?" Silence. Deep. Heavy. And then, softly, someone clapped. Just one. Then another. And another. Until the room was full of it. Not applause. Agreement. Jaden stepped back from the mic. 5 minutes were up, but something much bigger had just started. The new sign outside Jefferson Middle was small. No ribbon cutting, no cameras. Just brushed metal on brick. Parker Learning Center, Satellite Resource Room. Most kids walked past it without a glance, but some didn't. Inside, the walls were lined with shelves. Not books, not yet, but hygiene kits, school supplies, meal cards, and sealed snack packs. A whiteboard hung near the entrance with a handwritten message: "Take what you need." No questions asked. Jaden didn't run it. He just visited, once a week, mostly to refill the shelf with peanut butter crackers. The podcast came later. Not his idea. A journalism major from the local university reached out. Said, "If you've got something to say, I got a mic and a feed." They called it Empty Tray, Full Truth. In the first episode, Jaden didn't tell his story. He read someone else's. A cafeteria worker from Milwaukee who got fired for giving a kid an extra apple. After 10 episodes, they had over 300,000 subscribers. On the 11th, Jaden sat across from his mother. Linda wore her old school apron. She didn't speak for the first 5 minutes. Then she said, "You're still my boy. That's all I care about." Jaden smiled. That one went viral too. A month later, they got an email from a senator's aide. The committee is recommending a federal review of school meal standards and budgeting. "We'd like Jaden to testify." Linda typed the reply herself. "He's busy that day. Feeding kids." The foundation came next. The Parker Fund. Micro grants for schools. Free meal programs. Legal support for whistleblowers. On the website, the mission was simple. No child hungry. No voice ignored. It didn't end the problem, but it started something. And sometimes that's enough. In the hallway at Jefferson, a new 6th grader stood staring at the metal plaque. Jaden passed by and paused. The kid asked, "Are you the kid from the video?" Jaden shrugged. "I'm just a kid from the lunchroom." He kept walking. Behind him, the boy reached into the resource shelf, took a sandwich, and smiled, because this time no one asked him why.